Cairo, Seattle.
It's time to get schooled with the professor, John Clayton.
Welcome to Schooled with the Professor, and today's topic is going to be, what do we have as far as ownership in the National Football League and influential owners? And certainly, you know, there's nobody more powerful right now than, say, Jerry Jones. Yeah, you can maybe say Robert Kraft or the New England Patriots, the Rooney family in Pittsburgh, the Mara family with the New York Giants. But it's important to have great ownership. And one of the great parts about having the ownership that you have down in Dallas with Jerry Jones, and is now going to lead to him being a candidate for the contributor category of the National Football League's Pro Football Hall of Fame, is what has Jerry meant to the league? And people sometimes forget that you don't necessarily have to walk in toe step with what the commissioner wanted, because if you really go back in 1989, Jerry Jones came into the league as an owner, bought the Dallas Cowboys. It was a team that was losing money. He came back and turned it into one of the biggest profit-making teams. In fact, Forbes magazine in the next week or so is going to put out the value of teams. I know last year they had the Cowboys at $4 billion, and you can see that the number is going to go up even more. It's like the richest franchise almost in sports. That's how good it is. And, in football, it's the key. But, Jerry Jones's love for football. That same year, new commissioner, Paul Tagliabue. And so the two of them, even though they sometimes worked at odds with each other, they worked together in the way that they've built this league. And in the case of Paul Tagliabue, and that's why it's kind of fun to see that both have a chance to go into the Hall of Fame in the same year, was able to, have all that time as the commissioner with total labor peace. And honestly, I never thought that was going to happen because, I covered 5 work stoppages, and they were sometimes nasty. Well, Paul Tagliabue had a good working relationship with Gene Upshaw, the head of the NFL Players Association, and was able to parlay that into labor peace that allowed the sport to grow. Jerry Jones, being the salesman that he was, sometimes went against the grain in the National Football League, but helped market his team and market the league and get the league even better. To now, not only has he built the best stadium maybe in sports down in Dallas, he helped Stan Kroenke get enough votes that Kroenke in Los Angeles may actually top what's there in Arlington with that stadium, the AT&T Stadium. And, it's great. And that's one of the things I always love. In fact, I'm hoping to get to the fall meeting because it's going to be fun to see how Jerry was able to swing votes and see if they can get something done in Vegas. Now, of course, the Raiders want to move to Las Vegas. There's interest enough to see if they can get $850 million out of the population there in a tax that's not going to come out of anybody's pocket except the hotels, but, for travelers going in. But he probably can swing enough votes. And here's how powerful Jerry Jones is. Jerry Richardson was the head of the relocation committee, the owners that were trying to see about taking care of the Los Angeles move. And Jerry Richardson thought that he had 18 or 19 votes for the move of San Diego and Oakland, the Chargers to L.A. and the Raiders into L.A., and they would have had the stadium over in Carson. Well, he thought he had the votes, and of course Jerry is really powerful. One of the most powerful owners of his generation. And so they go in, and Jerry made sure through other different people that this was going to be a secret ballot. So it's like you can say you're supporting the Jerry Richardson, but you have Jerry Jones working the scene. So all of a sudden they take the first vote, and it was like 19-13 or maybe 20-13 in favor of Stan Kroenke. And so much of that is because Jerry Jones controlled things. In fact, at that meeting, Paul Allen, who rarely goes to NFL owners meetings, actually stood up and says, hey, now, folks, you take a look at the proposal with Stan Kroenke and that palace, and then you look at what's there for Carson. Shouldn't we consider what's the better venue? And, of course, it was Stan Kroenke. And, of course, Jerry Jones, with his power, was able to do that to a point that within a couple votes, the move was Stan Kroenke. And it looks like it's going to be a great move for the Rams and a great move for the National Football League. But then on the flip side, now most people around the league think that Jerry already has about 18 votes for the Raiders moving to Vegas. Now, you need 24 votes to get anything passed in the National Football League, and trying to get 31 billionaires, and I say 31 because you got the Green Bay Packers, which is a publicly owned team, and there's no billionaire individual that's owning the team that are going to support it. But in the end, it's one where you can see Jerry has the power. it's amazing. People don't understand the importance of good ownerships. We had the pleasure of having Eddie DeBartolo get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame this past year, and he was able to take the 49ers, a team that was just dormant for so many years, put pride in it, put money into it, would go around the office every day and say, okay, you guys need anything? He'll go over to the people in accounting and says, now, what do you need that we can help us win? He'll go to personnel and do the same thing. And sure enough, he built a dynasty. I mean, you can see Robert Kraft has done the same thing with the New England Patriots. He gets Bill Belichick. They get Tom Brady. And he supports the team and tries to keep it going as positively as he can. Well, I mean, Dallas may not have had the on-the-field success, but the way that they have maintained that brand, the way that they have had everything as far as classy football, as far as the the product itself, but along with the fact that he built a palace down at the AT&T Stadium. In fact, they've got some things going on now where they just moved their facility, their headquarters, and it is another great thing because now they've got high schools involved. They've got all these different things involved. The community is involved. When Jerry Jones does things, he does it his way. And when good owners do things, they do it their way. And so sometimes, they may make mistakes in personnel because most owners don't get involved in personnel like Jerry Jones does. Jerry, he loves this game, always wanted to get into this game and all that. But, I mean, it's just fun because, you see bad ownership. Bad ownership tends to lose. I mean, not to individually knock Jimmy Haslam of the Cleveland Browns, but you notice they keep on changing coaches every year or two, changing philosophies. You need stability, and you need the ability to surround and get good players. You need a good quarterback. Okay, so Jerry's got a good quarterback when Tony Romo, unfortunately, he's hurt. He's got a good coach in Jason Garrett. He was able to at least, try to keep the team as competitive as possible, and he always is going to try to be able to win. But, good owners deserve good things. It'll be great to see if Jerry can make it and get enough votes to get in. I mean, he needs about 9 votes, I think, out of the 48 that we're going to have at the meeting. But again, great owners deserve a chance to get into the Hall of Fame, and Jerry Jones always has a chance to get into the Hall of Fame. We hope that happens along with Paul Tagliabue. But it's funny that both came up the same year into the National Football League, both built great resumes. And coming up, we'll talk to Jerry Jones about the Cowboys, the National Football League, and where this league is going. We are pleased to be joined by Jerry Jones, who is one of 2 contributors to the Pro Football Hall of Fame that we'll be voting on right before the Super Bowl, Paul Tagliabue being the other. And I can tell you, having been in that room on the contributor committee, Jerry, is that one of the things that really kind of paralleled, you came into the league buying the Cowboys in 1989. Paul Tagliabue took over as commissioner in 1980 as a commissioner, and all of a sudden, the pairing of you two together through the years has been great for the league and great for football.
Well, I wouldn't have thought that when he came in that we would be addressing some of the things, the issues, if you will, that we have over during his tenure, of course. But I couldn't have seen how the league would have evolved. And who would have known that as a country we'd go into 15 years of the greatest prosperity our country's ever seen, but more importantly, as it pertains to this conversation, that the league would take on the stature that it has. And I say that in all humbleness because I really had a decision to make. I knew I was leaving the world, if you will, of daily work, business, and wanted to spend the rest of my life with people of sports and be around them. And I thought, well, would I get cabin fever? Would I miss that competitiveness? Would I miss the challenges that occur over outside of sports? Well, who would have ever dreamed that the league would have evolved? And, of course, Paul was there as commissioner and addressed from that level, from the challenges and the opportunities that were there. And it just gave us all, when we know that the reason we got in this thing was for football and sports, it gave us all a chance to really be involved at a great period of time.
Well, and the great part, and this was part of the conversation that we had in putting up the nominations, clearly as a commissioner who had labor peace and had the great growth in this league, Paul Tagliabue was long overdue as far as getting in and getting this opportunity. But what was so unique about what you did as an owner, I mean, even though you may have gone against the grain of the commissioner at different times, you helped promote the sport so much and, in your own way, get the league involved in so many different things in getting this success story.
Well, I always have had a not exaggerated, but I've had a large view of what football and what the NFL, what it can be. Once I saw the visibility that is involved with television, once I saw that the league carried with it and was getting the substance as to social issues, once you saw all of that, then it really, I think I might have mentioned to you when you called, I was a walk-on, really. And the NFL, the game, the way the league has evolved inspired me to be better and more than I would have ever done being in some other discipline or outside the NFL. It's been inspirational, and it really, John, seems almost unfair to have been involved, had the challenges, and had the enjoyment that I have in the NFL, and still get a little pat on the back. That almost seems unfair.
That vision came clear in one incident I know we discussed in the room, is that the broadcast committee, wanted to kind of get that stage where it was going to be a flat TV contract, and you stood up and said, no, we can't do this. We need to increase. And by doing that, it created more revenue. It created for a better game, more marketing, all those different things. And you seem to have that vision right from the moment you bought the team.
I had been involved pretty significantly in the NBC affiliate in Little Rock, Arkansas. And the competition, CBS at that time and ABC, there were only 3 networks. CBS bought I Love Lucy. Well, a lot of people listening to you won't remember I Love Lucy, but it was such a hit show. And they charged so much for I Love Lucy that I knew you could not make it work. It wouldn't financially work. And I asked the guy that ran the CBS station why, and he said because I Love Lucy lifted the value of everything. It created credibility. It created additional viewers. It was that strong a programming. And so that when I did become involved in the television committee, my thoughts were the NFL needs to be I Love Lucy. We need to be more than just $1 out and $1.01 in. We need to lift the station. We need to lift the network, and we need to bring viewers in and keep them there and add credibility. And when you do that, you can grow the pie. And that was my, if you will, unsophisticated approach to it. And so consequently, what ended up happening is obviously the networks did increase their rights fees. It grew the pie for everybody, players specifically, made the league more substantive, in my view, not just me, but the fact they made that kind of commitment. And they just put a different value as to advertisers and to that entire area. Consequently, I think it did cause networks and to really view the league with a greater value.
Talking to Jerry Jones. Now, what was your vision when you first got the idea of purchasing the Dallas Cowboys? Because clearly it was one of the best brands in sports. You had to really take deep debt to be able to do that. When did that vision first come up, and then take us through that?
Well, my master's thesis was the role of communication, selling, if you will, in modern-day football. That's what I was a business undergraduate major, but my master's thesis was about that. And I did many surveys with Bear Bryant and Paul Dietzel and many names of coaches, people who had to sell the game, sell their players, sell their alumni. And I had an inspiration. Frank Broyles was my coach at Arkansas, and he was an inspiration in and of himself. Had a great experience. Got to play on a national championship football team. Well, with all of that, I knew that somehow, some way, I needed to be involved in sports. Now, I would have coached, and really deep down, that's what I wanted to be. On the other hand, they didn't make any money, and consequently, I was, I guess, too much oriented in that direction. Well, had I known what I'm paying them today, I might have been a coach. But consequently, the interest in the game, the interest in being just some way a part of the game. So I used to hang out around, sneak off from my job, go where the AFL were having meetings, hang out in the lobby for Bud Adams, Lamar Hunt, Ralph Wilson, those guys to come out in the lobby and just go up there and introduce myself and talk to them. I just wanted somehow to be involved. And that's how I basically was involved, and I thought it had passed me by financially, but then when the Cowboys had an opportunity to come along, it fit to some degree where I was. They were losing $1 million a month in cash flow. The Cowboys were. And I had to buy 13% of the Cowboys from the government, FDIC, that had been foreclosed on, with more on the way to be foreclosed on. So we had a challenge to really make it financially sound here.
Of course, and then now you've taken it. I mean, what is the challenge of being the owner of the Cowboys? Because, again, that brand is so important. Fans care so much, not just in Texas, but all around the world.
Well, I think that's it, is you do have, I do, an appreciation for the men and the women that have worked to make it substantive, not only the form that it operates in, the league, the NFL, but also at the franchise level. And I have always thought that the world was your oyster in terms of creating interest in many of the things that happen with a franchise. We were the first team, for instance, at ESPN to put the camera in the draft room. And I think that quite possibly you remember that.
I do.
And but just looking for ways to continue to create the fan experience that in its own way will ultimately create viability, financial viability too. The more interest you have, the more financial viability you have.
So no surprise, I mean, you built one of the great stadiums in the world, I guess. It's such a great platform. You're so involved in Los Angeles, in Stan Kroenke's move to try to do something similar in L.A. with a stadium. It's like, and now you can look, and I'm sure Forbes is going to be coming out in the next few days with the value of the team, which, of course, is just remarkable how it's gone. When you do things, you do it the big way.
Well, John, that is a compliment from your mouth to me. But it has always been about how we can enhance the experience, and then the rest will follow. I'll never see the value because I'll never sell, and my family will not sell the Cowboys. That's not the real point. And I would trade those values for enough first downs. I want you to know that. And a chance to get in the playoffs. But the idea of where we are in the NFL, from my perspective, has always been, let's just take Los Angeles. It was what would grow the NFL. All boats are lifted, not just the Cowboys. All boats are lifted. The players' boats are lifted. The fans' boats are lifted. It is important that we're substantive, if you will, in every respect that we can be. So anytime I get a chance to improve an aspect of the game, we're doing the Star right now. It's it's our offices and our practice facilities, but it's in the North Texas, North Dallas area. And that's joining our our offices and our facilities with the Frisco, Texas high school system. And those high schools are going to be playing where we practice, where Romo is on the field as the players walk out on Friday night or Thursday night to play, and there'll be interchange. They'll be joined at the hip, if you will. And this way those players can basically look and say, I can be that someday. I can do that. Or they can look at the facility and say, I can do that. When I was a senior, we played in the Cotton Bowl, but we worked out in Houston to get away from the hecticness in the crowd. We walked they gave us a tour of the Astrodome. I couldn't believe it. It was ready to go. There hadn't been an event in it. But I looked at that, and I thought, my goodness, to get to play a sport in here, to get to be involved, where do people come up with this idea? How do they do it? So I started reading about Judge Hoffines, and I started reading everything I could. And so that really, when I got ready to build the AT&T Stadium, all of that did kick in, and it said, well, if it could be done then, I can do this now. And that's the inspiration that we hope in its own ways could feed over into, through the NFL, through sports, to youth.
On your vision, and finally, what do you see looking ahead as far as the National Football League?
I see a very interesting technology that really presents our games. This handheld business is such an opportunity for our game to have that many more people involved. John, this is a surprising stat, and I use it a lot. Only 7% of NFL fans have ever been inside an NFL stadium. Only 7. But that has to have pageantry. That has to be a great experience. But our game is about presenting it through the equivalent of television or that technology. And so I really do see continued things that are involved in the presentation of our games as well as our events, not only the combine, not only the draft, but other areas that will engage the millenniums, engage future generations for our game. And that's really what Los Angeles was about, to take that and create a wow and create that much more interest to do it right in Los Angeles. The future is obviously easy to say, but tangibly, I think the NFL, sport, football have a way to be just as substantive, maybe more so in the future.
Well, Jerry, it'll be my pleasure when we get down to the Super Bowl and get you starting ready to put that star in a yellow jacket and get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Jerry, thanks so much for joining us, and great luck this season.
John, coming from a Hall of Famer himself, and I know your listeners know, but you are the recipient of the equivalent of the Hall of Fame with the NFL. I can't tell you how humbling that is and how excited I am to look forward to maybe being involved.
Fantastic. Hey, Jerry, thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Good news, everyone! It's time
to ask the professor.
Why? Says who?
Because, and says me.
Welcome back to Schooled with the Professor. Remember, each week you get the chance to ask me any question that you have relating to the podcast. Just get on Twitter and use the hashtag ClaytonSchooled. This week, we're talking NFL ownership, and our question comes from RyDog818, who asks, will we see a move from individual and family team ownership to more group ownership over the next few decades in the National Football League? And how's that going to change the league? And that's a great question, because it's a debate because of the value of these franchises that is always going to be there. Because I think you can see with now franchises going between $2 billion and $4 billion as far as their evaluation, that you just can't have an individual very few individuals now that can purchase it. And so there's always been talk having it like some of the other sports and maybe having corporate ownership or ways to get into that or changing the way the structure is. Now, naturally, if you have enough families that continue, like for example in Jerry Jones, he has Stephen Jones and family. This is going to stay for generations in the Jones family, like it is in Pittsburgh with the Rooneys, the Maras in New York. And so as long as I'd say more than half the league, can stay and keep things in the family, then you're not going to see it. But let's say, for example, you now have more franchises that have ownership that the family doesn't want to have it. I mean, and that does happen occasionally. Like, for example, the Denver Broncos. I don't know if the Bolin family is going to continue. They probably will, but after Pat Bolin, is there enough interest to be able to do it? I mean, there was certainly a debate in Tennessee whether the children of Bud Adams wanted to continue having the team, but they have decided to keep the team. There's always going to be that debate, and the value keeps going up, and there's no reason to sell. But if it gets to the point now where values are going to be, and they're going to be at $8 billion, $9 billion, I mean, you just can't have. There's only going to be 150 to people that would have the ability to write that check and be able to do it worldwide, and so it limits the number. So at some point, that will probably have to happen, but it doesn't have to happen as long as the families continue to own the teams. And if they can do that for a couple decades, then there's no worries. But how's that going to change the league? Well, I mean, one thing that's great about the National Football League is because you have families, I mean, you don't have that corporate battle that's going to be there. You don't have boards that are going to be overruling different things. You don't have that ownership that is always going to be contentious because, it's now 7-8 people in a company that are making the decisions as opposed to one. I mean, one thing that's great about the National Football League, if you have an owner and he's an individual, he's a family member, and he's the lead person or she's the lead person, then simply, I mean, you have one decision maker to make the decisions, whether they're going to be right or wrong. And so when you get into an ownership group at a meeting and you're trying to get things passed, it's not like going to some kind of a ownership board meeting. I mean, it's a matter, it's like, okay, here are the owners, here's what you can expect from those owners, and here's that history in the National Football League. So you want it to continue that way because, number one, it's worked. It's worked in many ways. And, as these new owners have come in, the Arthur Blanks and, some of these rich owners that have, been purchasing teams, I mean, they've been good fits because they've been very good to the league. And a guy like a Jerry Jones, for example, has been great for the league in the sense that by keeping things in the family and also being a very savvy business person, a very savvy salesperson, he's been able to grow the league. So it does work. But if all of a sudden the families no longer have the inheritance, the ability to get it to the next group of family members, then there will be change. But right now, I don't foresee change, but change could be bad. Right now, I don't foresee it. That's it for this week's edition of Schooled. You can follow me on Twitter at ClaytonESPN and send me your NFL questions with hashtag ClaytonSchooled for a chance to get your questions on the air and on the podcast. If you have a minute, please let's have a review on iTunes. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.